Welcome, 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 welcome. Glad to be here today. Glad to be with you all again for another episode, another week. This week is gonna be our first week having TikTok with us, so we're gonna spend this episode taking a little time catching them up with all the things that we're doing. Welcome TikTok to Soul Swami's live show, live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But Thursdays are generally book club. So I appreciate you all joining. So this channel is a channel for healing. And what we're going to do is do a little review, catch you all up. Because we've been going this for about 10 months now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Instagram. So this is our first night on TikTok. So I know you guys have no idea what we do here, but like I said, it's a channel for healing. And so it's ironic that we starting with you all tonight because last week on Twitch, someone asked me a few questions to pretty much explain what it is, who I am, and what it is we do here. So let me see if I can get that started for you. Yeah. All right, so it's going to give you a couple of questions. On the screen, you'll see the Twitch questions and pay attention to my answers because for the most part, that's what happens here. So simply put, that is the art of healing through laying hands. And that is me telling everyone that answering that question and telling them I'm a trained Reiki specialist. And simply put, Reiki is the art of laying hands. And I help people with that process. I have worked with children and families for longer than I care, in therapeutic settings, in homes, in schools, in any place that you can. I have, I deal with grants, whether they're state, federal, or local grants. And I have ran organizations from as an executive director and things of that. So during my daytime, when I'm not on live, I deal with grants. And when I'm on live, I deal with healing. So I've worked my way up the ladder from working with doing therapy with people directly in their homes, doing therapy with children with reactive attachment disorder, doing therapy with adults, then moving on to programs for children and families, ensuring that communities of poverty have the opportunity to still have resources, and specifically resources to educate their children. So that's what I do, my profession. But I don't do much of that now. Like now, I just help other people. As a matter of fact, right now, totally on live and in my profession, though, all I really do is help people be the best that they can be, whether it be business or personally. So, great question. So, I have worked with the community, children, families, and in almost any aspect that you can think of for at least 20 years now professionally. And because of that, of course, I definitely have some certifications and qualifications and all of those things. And those are some of the things that allow me to sit in front of you today to be able to try to help you with the healing process. So that first question was, what is my profession? And the next question is basically my response to someone who is on this healing path. So we generally call it the healing ship, and we relate to each other as family, and we create a safe space for communication and a bunch of things. So I'll go a little deeper in that in the video. So you're asking me, am I trying to heal myself and others? If you are asking me, yes. So the main thing about this is an opportunity for us to create a space for healing and safe communication. And generally, what I do is I put my healing on Front Street and I invite others to share theirs. And through community, through sharing, vulnerability, and safe communication, we heal ourselves and each other. Great question. I'm glad you asked that. So, a lot of times it may seem like I'm just talking and telling stories, but the talking and telling stories are what connects the people, what they can relate to, what's vulnerable. Sometimes we just laugh and we tell jokes. Sometimes it's heavy. Sometimes you actually will have people on this live who are having their energy read. So I keep my pendulums here. I do have tools that help me read energy. So think of it as somewhat of alchemy. Laws are. And one law that is always true is the well. So for the most part, what you will see a little bit later, one of the things that I do in life and on this channel is energy readings. And I held up a pendulum in the video to show that is one of the tools that I use to help me read energy. And essentially, when I read energy, it's just an exercise of using my intuition. And I generally just help people put words to some of the things that are going on in their life, some of the feelings that they're feeling, a bunch of things. Like I said, in the next segment, I'll show a little video of it so you'll have some idea on what it actually looks like. The laws of thermodynamics are always true. And here I'm talking about energy because for the most part, all things are energy. One of the things I didn't say is my undergrad degree is in biology. So I don't do too much of anything unless I can justify it scientifically. I'll tell anyone I'm a scientist by nature and a teacher by heart. So that's just who I am. And one of the laws what I speak on here is the laws of thermodynamics. Because in science, most things are just theory. So it's just an idea. But generally, when it makes it a law, it's true all the time. But the one that I always relate to and I try to use and have everybody else understand is energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. So I can transfer energy to you, whether it be actual energy or the emotional energy or the traumatic energy or the joyful energy or the surprising energy. Energy takes on shapes and we can shape and manipulate the energy around us. So I help people to recognize their power and I empower them to trust themselves. Great questions. Glad you asked. We in this on these lives and in this group, in this healing boat that we are in, are learning. Some people want to be motivated. And then we also learn in this section, they asked me a specific question that I thought was important to share with everyone if you missed last week's live show. And it's about essentially when people want to, I don't know if you can read that, to be accepted for who they are and others trying to somewhat mimic your style or your personality or your energy or your vibe, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes this idea of being accepted who we are doesn't allow us to live in our greatest design, if that makes sense. So, what if I want people to accept me as who I am, and who I am is meant to be greater than I think, right? And that's something that we've talked about the last couple of weeks on how people normalize themselves and who they are. But sometimes people will see greater in us than we see in ourselves, which is funny that when it comes to be accepted as who you are, one of the things that we do here is ask ourselves the tough questions. Is who we are living as, is that our highest self? And then we also ask, is who we are living as. Is that who we are supposed to be? Right. So when you ask about others want to steal others' personality, they do say that, what is it? Impersonation is the the highest form of flattery, or something like that. So what you'll learn in this setting is we are more of glass half full people. So yeah, there are examples of people stealing, right? But one thing that I left out in my profession on what I do is I come from education. So I know that people have various ways of learning. Some people learn through visual, some people learn through auditory, some people learn through touch, right? But one thing that's consistent about however they learn is people need a model of behavior, a model of an example of the direction that they want to go. Something that we talked about before is relationships are reflective. And one way that they can reflect is the direction that you need to go. So sometimes people are aware that you are exhibiting something that they would like for themselves. And this is also where that idea of fake it till you make it comes in. So sometimes people, the only model that they have of how to beat whatever that is what you are or what you have done. And people will mimic that at times. And it isn't always a sinister plan. But unfortunately, and one of the reasons why we are here is most of the people in this world are not moving under sinister plans. We just worry too much about the people who are. And you know how we talked about energy? If you are worrying so much about the thieves and the people who steal and those things, you are inadvertently creating an energy that's just like theirs. And it makes it easier for them to find you. So when it comes to that idea of people taking a personality, I would just tell you to continue living your greatness and take some of that as an honor. People are trying to honor you, and you just keep going forward. You know what I mean? So I think I don't know if that quite answered your question, but that is definitely a perspective that you can look at it as. On time. So essentially on this channel, we are trying to create a safe space for healing, vulnerability, and communication. We're in a time period where it seems like a lot of us want to be a little more than who we are or who we were, or a lot of us have dreams, goals, and aspirations and things that we want to achieve in the next section of our lives, and we think that we're alone. So, one of the purposes of this channel is to help you find your healing tribe and connect with other like minded individuals who are on the same process so that you can vibrate around energy that is an energy of growth and healing and all of those things that you want to be. So, the next clip is a little bit, like I said, about I spoke on that a lot of times on this show, we'll also do energy readings. So I did get a clip of an energy reading. I don't think, well, we definitely won't be showing the whole clip, but I do want you all to see some of what it is like. And we definitely you have to figure out a way to ooh stuff. Are you just trying to get a
Um,
little? So forgive my do rag.
I'm concerned about my love life.
So you want me to start with your heart?
Yeah, start with my heart.
All right, it's closed. No.
Also concerned about if my finances is going on.
Say it again in English.
Huh?
Say it again in English.
Don't do it. I said I'm also concerned about um my financial direction.
All right, we shall do your heart. Oh, that's Yaller. Ooh, Lord, let's see. Boop, boop, be doop. All right, you better. 'Cause then you can see how it's been too. All right, Charlie. I don't know. I'm getting feelings, so I got thoughts. Green, okay, maybe that makes sense. What is yellow? Solar plexus. I always got stuff on. All right. Thank you, Liberty. I tried to turn the sound down because I ain't want no feedback from playing the video. I appreciate you joining. I know you was tired. So, like I said, TikTok, we have family that joins us every week, and slightly out of rhythm, but not bad at all. We know each other. Doop, 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 doop. That could be like you just woke up from a nap or some weirdo shit like that. Let's see what's going on. Doop, 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 doop. Ooh. Honestly, I don't know. What do you think your problem is? Because it seems like it's moving pretty fairly. I mean, you got a little issues with uncertainty, which makes sense. You know what I mean? I mean, you're in a new area, so of course you're gonna have some uncertainty. Um, Little stuff going on with rejection, but that's normal. You know what I mean? Like hell. If you didn't have a little fear of rejection, I think something was wrong with you. So yeah. So what I'm looking on, I basically have a little cheat sheet, and what I do with that cheat sheet is it has words, depending on the energy point, and I just read the words and actually trust my intuition is one of the things that we do on this channel. We learn to trust ourselves and our intuition a little bit more, and if my energy or my intuition, my spirit, whatever you would like to call it, says something to me when I get to that word, then that's the word we have to discuss a little bit. Yeah. So something specific about your heart that you concerned about? This was not a live reading.
Just wanted to make sure that it's open and ready
Girl, you
to
not late. You right on
receive
time. I
love. I
appreciate
know I'm out of the
it
video.
always. It's that. It's open, right? Yeah, I'm glad you found it, 'cause I can never find it. It's open. So, but I do
Wow.
just thinking off the top of my head, you
The other
do
day.
have to put yourself out there a little more. And as of right now, I just seems like you kind of busy, and the time that the type of relationship that you would want to have needs it
Oh yeah,
may not quite
I'm
fit in
glad you
that
did show
schedule.
up because I'm about to show you next.
So you have to figure out a way to make that schedule also look inviting to the type of relationship that you want. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then
the
um
next
put yourself in position.
the
You
next
know what I
video
mean?
is
Or god darn,
your
shoot you at
Reiki
this
session.
point. And I always talk about that, especially the new city. Just put yourself out there. You know how to pick. You know what I mean? You know you might pick a dud, you throw them back, but just introduce yourself like, hey, hi. You know what I mean? Wink at motherfucker. I mean, that wink still work. So yeah, just put yourself out there, or pick who you want. So as far as your heart being guarded or anything like that, I mean, I don't get no vibe beyond normal caution. You know what I mean? So you trying to see if your heart is open? Yeah, it is. It's the availability that you got to work on. So it's definitely open. Now, you do got to work on some receive too. Um, so it's open and it's ready, but I do feel like you'll have some issues around receiving. And that's partly because of you being a giver. And most givers have a hard time. They struggle with receiving because they're always in the position of giving, 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 giving. So, and I'm not saying that that is your issue, but when it comes to this relationship and putting yourself out there on the line for love, receiving will be an area that you want to keep on the forefront of your mind. So when you start receiving it, you won't have those conflicts. You know what I mean? Because that's an area where you can struggle. So you put it on the forefront of your mind, you'll be all right. Is another one you want to talk about? So that gives you some idea on how the energy readings go. A lot of times they're live. Trust me, like I said, we've been doing it a long time. So they were tragic at the beginning. So you guys get to get in. And of course, they are going to improve a little bit more. But trust me, it was tragic at the beginning. But for the most part, like I said, I go through every energy point and either I just tell you what's off or we do some coaching and we talk about it and we can talk about ways to balance that energy or heal the issue that you're dealing with, depending on what that is. And then something else that we do, or something else that I do for people who are seeking their healing, is the Reiki session. And it's easier to show you what that is like because it's hard to visualize. But I don't have sound to this video, so I'll just talk to you about it a little bit. And actually, the person in the video is with us today. So for the most part, you just see me trying to set the energy. I'm a water sign, so one of my gifts is dealing with things that create waves. So I like sound waves. So a lot of the stuff that I do in trying to help people balance their energy is going to be based on waves and also connecting to the child and you being able to play a little bit and things of that nature. And it's all about calming you down and helping you feel safe with the environment and all those things. So that's just me and my fancy dancy rain stick. I love that rain stick, really. And keep it true. Everybody loves that rain stick. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Come on now. So I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. And generally, before we start, of course, I do a little saging. Um, Sage, for the most part, is to clear your energy and to clear my energy. I do have a variety of sages, and for people, like I said, it's about an exercise of you also trusting your intuition. So I let you pick, and you just got to go with your intuition and pick what sage speaks to your spirit. And it's funny because most of the time, to me, the sages, I can't, my physical cannot really smell the differences in the sages, but for the most part, I react like my spirit reacts a little different to them. Is it froze? Hold on. Am I froze? Okay, no, it's not. Thank you. I was about to say, I'm about to be a little disappointed, y'all. Been working so hard. I need that rain stick. You talking about my rain stick? But hey, you know what? Everybody really winds up falling in love with that rain stick. I did a little session this weekend, and it was funny because they thought that they weren't going to play or anything, and the first thing they grabbed was that rain stick. I did allow her to sage me so I can make sure my energy's clean and we're matching energy. Um, Also, the caveat to her is she's already had a couple of sessions, so she wanted to try Hape. And Hape is a ceremonial tobacco. And what it does is, for lack of better words, it just brings down some of your guards, make you a little calmer, and brings mental clarity. And for some reason, depending on who you are, it can have a tendency to connect to some emotion in you and help you release that emotion. So in my experience, I've seen people dance off of it. When I first took it, I cried. Um, this is me giving her Hape. I've seen people actually throw up. But the most common thing is crying, and the wild thing is it definitely helps you get rid of a lot of mucus, which is wild. So doop, doop, doop. She a little anxious, so that's her first time. So you see the little anxiety, but she took it like a champ. So I give her props. And this is pretty much what a Reiki is. So for her, she's wearing all black. People who show up all dressed in all black, um, for me, that is really a sign that they're still a little bit guarded. So for her, she's having a hard time trying to relax. And when I deal with people who are still in that space, the first thing I wind up doing is I wash their feet. It's a humbling experience where I humble myself to you and hopefully create an energy where you understand that my purpose is to help. Eh, eh, and the rest is just the Reiki session itself. So Reiki is pretty much like a massage, but without the pressure. It's gentle, excuse me, gentle touches, yeah, it's just gentle touches. Either I could touch you or hover above you, but it's really about trying to manipulate the energy inside of you or helping you figure out what energy is affecting you or whatever. And one of the reasons why she came is for a physical pain. She had wound up having a surgery and was having some pain with it. So Reiki does help with physical pain within itself too. If you would like to see that whole video, you can go to one of my other channels. It's definitely on YouTube. It's definitely on Facebook. It is not on Instagram, but check out Soul Swami on YouTube, and you can see a bunch of different videos and actually catch up because it is not on TikTok. All right, so now I want to try to catch you all up with some of the topics we have discussed on this healing journey. And most of the family is still already familiar with it because they've been a part of it. And ironically, it's going to be crazy because this is probably the first time I've taken an assessment on how much we've actually discussed or how far we've come in the last 9 or 10 months. But one of the major topics that we discussed was this idea of grace. And it's really in application to yourself because sometimes you can be one of the main things we talk about, and I didn't even put it on this list, is the language that we use when we talk to ourselves. Like even I'm a funny person. I make people laugh all the time. And one of the things I used to say is I'm crazy, and I used to allow people to say I'm crazy, but we don't say stuff like that anymore. We say I'm creative, I'm funny. We just don't use language like that. So this idea of grace is to give to yourself. You know what I mean? Start trying to make sure the forgiveness and the patience and the understanding that you give to everyone else, you also give to yourself, specifically to yourself. And a lot of what we do is getting down to the bare bones of things and talking about the definition and what grace actually means and why we struggle to accept it or give it to ourselves. Because even when we try to give ourselves a little forgiveness or grace, we have that internal dialogue that tells us sometimes that we don't deserve that grace. And it's ironic, we can give it to so many other people. And then the main way we have to give ourselves grace is forgiveness for our self called traumas, for the mistakes that we've made, for the choices that have put us in traumatic situations or had us where we've had traumatic experiences. Weekly, we discuss challenges that we've had. I'm also in a men's group. So on Facebook, if you like to join the men's group, it's Strength, Wisdom, and Brotherhood. Or just check me out on Facebook and I can get you connected to that if you're a man and you're looking for a tribe where you can just talk about it. We meet every Monday in on Zoom and we just go at it. You know what I mean? So we have weekly discussions on challenges that we have. And some of the challenges that we discussed is putting yourself first or putting yourself out there. Like we heard us talking about in that video, that's one of the difficulties that a lot of people face is that fear of what happens, what could happen when we put ourselves out there. And the funny thing about that is for me, this whole thing has been an exercise in this skill of putting myself out there. Um, we talked about the challenges with vulnerability in dating. That's a scary space to be. We have talked about how our relationships with our parents shape how we date in conscious ways and unconscious ways. And what we try to do with those unconscious ways is take time and ask questions and bring the unconscious ways to our conscious forethought, our conscious mind, so that we can actually begin to work on some of those traumas that we may have blocked out or forgotten about in an effort to continue with life. We've also talked a bunch about relationships, but not necessarily just romantic. Specifically, in this one thing that also mentioned is how relationships are reflective. And a lot of times we talk about that in the sense of the present state of mind. And yeah, I know you've been a person and you've been in one of those relationships and you've been like, I know that relationship is not reflection of who I am and where I am. The part of that reflective nature that people don't really discuss is relationships can reflect where you were. So sometimes you can look at people and you be like, man, that's what it used to be like to date me. And then relationships can reflect where you are. And then relationships can also reflect where you would like to go. So when we talked about relationships, those are some of the things that we talked about. We also discussed this idea of actions versus words, and how you actually need a balance of both to create the truth that you'd like to see. I will never forget in my undergrad, my one of my teachers used to always say, "Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see." And that's a fair assessment because it's not saying don't trust. What it is saying is do your due diligence and research for yourself. And I think a lot of times we mistake some of these sayings as saying don't trust. But remember, this is a safe space and we're creating a space um, for growth. And we are glass half full people as we go forward. I appreciate you, Tatiana. I see you watching. I just got my notification. I honestly don't even see any of the comments now, but I appreciate you watching. As always. Another main thing that we talked about is rewriting the contracts in our lives. And this came from this idea of marriage. There's a culture or a frame of thought that marriage vows or that contract of marriage should be renewed every 7 years. And every 7 years, you create a new contract based on who you've grown to be or the changes that you have made in your life. And they think, because they don't know if it's really true, I guess it's something that has to be researched, but they do think it would extend marriages. So we talked about how, well, if we can rewrite a contract on marriage, what other contracts can we rewrite? So we talked about rewriting our contract on communication, our contract on how we manage stress, our contracts on work-life balance. Because one of the main things through this is when I started this, I was in between jobs. And I honestly wasn't going to go back to my old field that I had done for 20 years because I just wanted to do something different. I just didn't want the stress. So I had to write a new contract on how I manage stress, on a work-life balance, and even contracts on things like how do we approach conflict. Excuse me one second. I drink during the show. I'll be having my water. As I get thirsty, I do a lot of talking. One of the other concepts that we talked about is this idea of taking a woman out of her masculinity for men and manhood. And we talked about who is actually responsible for doing that. And we also discuss some of the trauma that can happen to men who take that approach. We also talked about this idea of supposed to. And it really relates to stuff like, when you say you're paying your bills and washing your clothes and cooking for yourself, the things that people say are adulting. Um, that's a perfect example of stuff where you be like, you're supposed to do that, so you shouldn't get kudos for it. But what it winds up doing is that mindset winds up one normalizing our greatness where we don't even recognize because dead serious. If you paid your rent on time, do you know how many people can't do that regularly? And there are people in this world telling you that that is just the normal. That's not the normal. That is something great about you. And you had to do some abnormal things like be consistent, be diligent to get to that, to be able to do that. We go in deep on how we have normalized our greatness and that idea of supposed to also, all right, also winds up decreasing the value of appreciation. So how this came into play is thinking about things like high school grades. So if you are one of those people who made good grades, you probably come from a family that even if you made good grades, you could have made better grades. So that idea of you can always do better or you supposed to make good grades where you don't on things like that, it devalues the appreciation it should have. Something else major that we talked about, man, is healing the inner child. There is a break in the timeline. Like a lot of times, who we describe ourselves currently is not necessarily who we started out to be. And so for myself, one of the things that I wanted to figure out on this healing path was my anger issues. And it was crazy because when I took my spiritual journey, I talked to my own mother about it. And I was like, I kind of always been angry. And she agreed. But then I wound up having another moment that created somewhat of a break in the timeline where I can recognize some of the things that I had blocked out. And I realized before a certain event, I was not angry. I was always a happy child. I was always a happy child. I was always a happy child. And people knew me for that. And so that's the example. Generally, there's an event that may have changed you to be who you are to protect that inner child or that person that you were supposed to be. And we work on trying to get to that inner child and trying to help that person heal. We've also talked about being able and comfortable to share your experiences on something that someone has done to you. And it was crazy because on one show I talked about getting in conflict with someone over icing on a cake. I baked a cake and I made icing, but I didn't make the icing the exact way that they like it, and they got upset. So, and they actually didn't want me to talk about it, but I did talk about it because in one of these healing things, we like to work on our throat, our chakra, our throat chakra, our throat energy point, our voice, and we are okay. And we create a space where you can communicate some of the things that have happened to you because you're not seeking the approval of the person who actually did it to you. You're trying to create your own healing. We've talked about the idea of feeling seen as far as emotions. And as a matter of fact, the space that we're creating is a space that allows you to feel seen in the sense that you are no longer alone. You are with people who are in the same space, asking for the same things, wanting to do some of the same things that you want to do, and it's create a space for healing. We've discussed closure and how closure is a luxury and how important it is to develop the skills to create your own closure so that you will not be walking around with open wounds seeking closure that you may never get. We've asked ourselves some tough questions. Let me see where we at now. We've talked about what did our 14-year-old self need to grow and develop, and how do we learn about masculinity and femininity, and was that advice coming from a healthy place or a unhealthy place? Was it trauma advice based on trauma? And it's not a question of intentions because sometimes people give you terrible advice with the best intentions. Here we don't really judge intentions, we judge outcomes. So you have to think if that advice came from a healthy place or not. A major thing that we discussed is this idea of giving people the authority to judge our value and our worth. And we wind up really getting used to that through the school process. But one way we deal with it as adults is through the job application process. We apply to these jobs for people who don't know us at all, but they're trying to judge our value and our worth based on a piece of paper. And that doesn't always quite reflect. We do that in dating. And specifically, it is sometimes the expectation of one dating individual to do that. A lot of times, the expectation for men is to put himself in a position to be judged, his value or worth, by someone else. And this came into place because the question that we really want to ask is, do these people that we've put in that position to judge us actually have the authority to judge us? And something that made me think about that is we laugh, we tell a lot of stories on here. So one story, I dated a girl who had an AK-47. So that is one person that I should have never put in a position to judge my value, even if it's just for a relationship with them. I should have never been in a position to judge my value at all. We've talked about the idea of ghosting and how it can be beneficial and how it also can steal someone's opportunity for growth and development. A major thing that we've talked about within the last couple of weeks is this idea of a mother wound, and dealing with the mother wound and how to recognize mother wounds as far as being a people pleaser, putting others' needs before yours, and avoiding attachment behaviors, intense fear and guilt. That guilt thing really came around when we were having discussions about creating boundaries and how we feel about creating boundaries and recognizing how the guilt that we feel sometimes from creating boundaries actually comes from our upbringing. Um, you might be a person that feels like you have to be the good husband, the good wife, the good son, the good daughter, the good student, the good athlete. You just got to be the good with that mother wound. You have a tendency to avoid some conflict. You have difficulty expressing your needs and difficulty are drawing boundaries, which we just talked about with that guilt. And you would have the tendency to attract people who have that same wound as your mother may have had, and that is that abandonment wound. So we had to take a little time to think about it in our own lives. One, do we have an abandonment wound, and is that how we are connecting with people? Or is it someone else's wound that we are still carrying? We also talked about recognizing this idea of used to and how used to can be a frame of thought that keeps you stuck and gives you no room for new. Because something that you're not used to may be better than what you used to. And we talked about this as far as like who we want to be in the next section of our lives. And one of the things that I did is recognize that in my personal dating experience, I dated a lot of hard women. And the example I gave for that is I remember I've dated some women before where if I was disappointed, it would make them cry. And I've also dated women that if I was disappointed, they gonna argue with me about why they're still right, no matter how much it may have felt. So that idea of used to comes into place too, because that's what I was used to. But we also want to, we're trying to figure out who we want to be in the next section of our lives. So the discussion became on, I want to be a softer person. So I have to develop the skills because if I deal with a woman who cries just because I'm disappointed, I need to be a softer person to deal with that type of woman. Period. We also yeah, talked about working on our triggers and since in the sense that the triggers that are triggered from emotions that cause addictive responses, whether that addiction is sugar, whether that addiction is shopping, whether that addiction is drugs. We discussed on what we try to figure out what type of emotion, what type of emotional space are we sitting in when these things are triggered. Whether it be like I said, all food's a very, very huge addiction or vice for a lot of people. And all of this is to set us up for we've been discussing our rich life and how we would like that to look and what we would want to have in our rich design of life. Would you like houses, or would you like to stay in a condo? Or do you want to buy everything? Or do you want to lease more? Do you want more investments? Do you want days off? Do you want to work from home? Anything. We decide on how we would like our rich life to look. And then we also are talking about our love life. On this healing process, one of the things that you won't, I mean, you can, what you shouldn't do is go back. And you want new experiences. So you actually have to be a different person. You have to grow a little bit more or figure out who you have to be to get these new experiences. Because if who you currently are was what was needed for those experiences, you would have them. You need new skills. Not to say that the experiences that you have now aren't good, but you have to think of life and experiences and perspectives like tools in a toolbox. The more tools you have, the better you equipped for problems. If all you got is a hammer, what happens when you need a jack or a screwdriver? You throw you out the game. And the next biggest thing of our homework has been who do I have to be to get this rich life or this love life that I want? So if you want to join us and you want to be a part of the family for the week, that's the homework now. Start thinking about what you want your rich life to look like and what you want your love life to look like, and be as specific. So don't say, I mean, you can say stuff like you want to be financially stable in your rich life. But if you say financially stable, make sure you say what that actually is, what that means, what that looks like to you. How much is financially stable? Do you want $50,000 a year? You want $10 million in your bank account? Doesn't matter how much you make a year. So be clear on that. And your love life, like I talked about, I want to be able to have softer women in my love life. So for me to be able to have softer women, I have to become a softer man, or better yet, a more gentle man, which is can be difficult for a lot of men because in navigating these waters of life, gentleness can be a liability, very much so. And all of that is because we are trying to manifest something better for ourselves or something different, something improved from what we have. And one of the reasons we're taking this path is because a lot of time people will discuss manifesting, where they do vision boards or speak it out loud. And we always discuss that topic from the space of what we want. And the major part of manifestation is what we willing to give to get that. You know what I mean? If you are trying to manifest something, as much as you are going to be the receiver of what you're asking for, you're going to have to be the giver to get what you want. And that is why we ask that question: who do I have to be to get this rich life or this love life that I do want? So, for the most part, that's pretty much everything that we do. I know that was a little bit long and windy. We normally have a lot of laughs. We do a lot of different stuff, but I want to make sure, since this is TikTok's first time with us, I want to make sure that we try to take a little time to catch them up. So I hope you guys are caught up. If not, you're gonna have to watch it on YouTube or one of the other videos or something like that. You're gonna have to watch it somewhere else to catch up, because that was a lot, a lot. And I felt like I was repeating myself. Like I was saying, this is a safe space for communication and healing on this process. I want people to come in here and find their tribe, or in a sense, find people that you can relate to that are in the space, same energetic level or same energetic space as you. Don't forget to follow, comment, like, subscribe, all of the above, so you won't miss the shows. So, like I say, we go live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays are this: it's live energy readings and more. Sometimes conversations, sometimes it's videos, sometimes it's a live energy reading. And Thursdays are a book club. One of the things that we're doing, like I mentioned with the Reiki session, is connecting with the inner child in us. And one thing that we all loved as children is having someone read a book to us. So we take time, we vote on the book, and we pick a book, and I read everybody on Thursday. And I think we're going to add discussions to that because people are a little bit excited about the book we're reading now. And I think it is, what's that book? Before I Let Go. I appreciate that recap. And hey, Liberty knows that was a recap, but that is not all that we have talked about. We have talked about so much. Like I said, we've been doing it for about 10 months for, wow, every Tuesday. Oh, one more thing. Next week, next Tuesday, I don't know if I will be doing the show like this. Well, I know I won't be here because I'll be out of town. And the last time I tried to do a show out of town, that didn't work so good because I wound up having an event to attend on Tuesday evening. So I might pop up live and do a little something on mobile. I might try to do Thursday night book club, but we'll anticipate that we won't have the show next week, but we will have it every week after that. Maybe I'll do a recording or something, and we'll figure it out. But hopefully, you can join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays, whether you watch on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitch. We on them all. I appreciate you joining us tonight. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your presence. And I hope to see you again. Until next week, you all. Thank you.